A devastating trend with birth rates continues, and it threatens the economy long term. How? And how can you financially prepare? I've got that and more coming up. My name's Mike Bernard. I'm the host of The Wise Money Show. I'm also one of the certified financial planners right here at Korhorn Financial Group. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and smash that thumbs up button. I'm an optimistic person. I mean, you have to be, and my line of work, and you got to love people, and you've got to just assume that long term things will work out because they have. I'm an optimistic person. However, there are a few big, like macro, big risks that are hard to shake, and they just sort of stay with me. And you probably have that list as well. I've talked about it a little bit on in some videos. Government debt would be one of them. This topic is one of them as well, and that is the declining birth rate globally, but certainly here, or let's just say in many of the developed countries, but certainly here in the United States. Weird coincidence, not really, but whatever. But on my oldest child's birthday, the Wall Street Journal actually published an article speaking to the latest trend, and that is that U.S. fertility rates have declined again significantly from last year, or from 2022 to 2023, now at the lowest level since they began tracking this data back in the 1930s. So why would the Wall Street Journal be running this article, and why would I state that this is one of my big concerns out there? Well, because the fertility rate or population growth has a significant influence on the economy and our finances, and this is a devastating trend of population decline, devastating trend for the long-term economy. Here's how. Number one, a shrinking population threatens or limits overall economic growth. Number one, if there's fewer people, then there's fewer people in the workforce producing goods and services. But more importantly, there's fewer people then that are spending or consuming some of those goods. Here's a very clear example, and I know you already get this, but very clear example, especially with what's going on in the headlines, and that is that Apple is producing a bunch of phones because they're expecting a certain number of orders to come in, and guess what? Their suppliers are also expecting a certain number of orders to come in, so they're staffing up and they're getting supplies. And by the way, Wall Street, like analysts in Wall Street, they're all expecting a certain number of orders to come in and so on. And yeah, this is the very slow rising of the temperature of the pot that the frog's sitting in, because on a quarter to quarter, certainly on a month to month, quarter to quarter, maybe even year to year, this overall trend of declining fertility rates and population growth, birth rates, it's not going to impact the forecasts. But when you forecast out 5, 10, 15, 20 years, it certainly could play a big role if the overall, repopulation or population, the birth rates continues to decline. So overall, this data significantly limits the potential for economic growth out there in the future. And if GDP and corporate profits and all that are dependent on that population growth or people working and people consuming, then yeah, it's a big concern for the overall economy long term. Second, a declining population, or let's just say an aging population, right, limits the number of people paying into our social services that many people in retirement, almost everyone, rely upon, right? Right now, the number of workers paying into the Social Security system, you pay that through that four-letter F word, FICA. Your FICA tax is 7.65% on every dollar up to a certain level, 162,000 and so. You pay that. Your employer pays that as well. 6.2% of that 7.65 goes into the Social Security fund. Okay, so right now the ratio of workers to the ratio of, or to the number of people collecting Social Security, receiving benefits, is 3 to 1. 3 workers for every 1 person collecting. Guys, a few decades ago, it was multiples of that. It was multiples of that, and the projection is a couple decades from now, it's going to be 2 to 1. pretty soon, this has been my joke to some folks. I'm not sure if you've ever sponsored or given to Compassion International or others, where you have a sponsor card and you put it on the fridge, and hey, this is your donations are helping to support this person. We might get to that point where all of us, anyone that's working, will have a picture of a retired couple saying, hey, thanks for working to help this person. And that trend is worse, really, with Medicare. So fewer people being born today means fewer workers 20 years from now, means fewer people paying into these social systems compared to the large, swath of the population that's collecting benefits, receiving benefits. So that's the second big problem with the declining fertility rate. And the third sort of plays right along with it. If we have fewer people working, we'll have fewer people paying taxes, and we've got a growing amount of expenses as a country, and so the deficit could continue to balloon. Projections show that. But even bigger still, the national debt. If there's fewer workers and less taxpayer revenue, then there will be more borrowing on top of already extreme borrowing, and the debt load could continue to grow at an accelerated rate with less revenue to pay and support that debt load. And again, this is a couple of those big fears tied together and that feed off of each other. So yeah, guys, this is something that we have been aware of as a long-term potential threat. Now, how do you plan? How do you plan for your finances with this? And one, I would just tell you, again, as an optimist, there's silver lining here. There is silver lining here. Number one, people are living a lot longer. And by the way, we're living better as well, right? And I'm not going to share those stats. You've probably seen them. If not, and you need an injection of optimism, go search them and find them, because we are living decades longer thanks to modern medicine and so on. And could things get better? Should things get better if we improve and have a healthier lifestyle? Yeah, that would be fantastic. But people are living longer. So even though the repopulation rate, the birth rate, is slower, people are living longer, so the overall population growth is still there. We're still growing as a population. And so that's one. And then also the standard of living is significantly better than when it was back when families were much bigger. And usually families were much bigger because they needed workers, future workers, to help on the farm and so on. And so quality of life is much better as well. Second, of course, technology is likely to fill in a lot of the gaps of a shrinking workforce and provide more automation and more productivity then for the per person and for each company. And so that should help with overall economic growth as well. And then finally, just some silver lining to touch on with the benefit reform or Social Security issue is there will likely be reform coming. And the analysis that has helped guide some of the proposal here, proposal there, which again, politics, they're not going to decide anything until it's probably too late or almost too late. But they've worked in this shrinking population into their analysis to say, well, here's what we should do when we reform Social Security and if there's Medicare reform as well. So how do you plan? How do you plan? Number one, you've got to, when you're building out your long-term plan, we call it a 5-factor retirement plan. You've got to look at all 5 of those factors. And I guess I would not number one. I think this is the action item. Tune into that 5-factor retirement plan and evaluate how this long-term, potentially limiting economic growth and limiting threat, how it could influence each of those 5 factors, and do a stress test on your overall plan. Well, could that mean I might want to or need to work a little bit longer if my investments don't grow, which is the 5th factor, grow as much as they once did, right? If economic or stock market growth is tied to profitability growth, and profitability growth is slightly dampened because there's fewer consumers and so on, then maybe stress test your plan for that. If Medicare gets a little bit more expensive because there's fewer people paying into the system and therefore the Medicare rate needs to go up, stress test that in your plan. Or for our clients, we build in a higher than normal inflation adjustment to your Medicare premium as a way to hedge against this. Third, income in retirement. hedge against Social Security. Maybe assume you're not going to draw Social Security right away. What would it look like if you delay a little bit? And what if Social Security ends up being a little bit less than what your current benefits state because of reform or necessary adjustments due to a declining population? Planning, comprehensive financial planning, looking at all 6 areas of your financial life, and then one of those, retirement planning, building out this 5-factor retirement plan, is planning ahead for an uncertain future, but having confidence even though that future is going to remain uncertain because you've proactively thought through what could lie ahead and you're putting some hedges in place and planning ahead, saving up or making adjustments, changing your perspective and changing your decisions. That's the approach that you need to take. So work with your CFP on that. If you don't have a CFP on your team, you can contact one on my team. Find us online, Korhorn.com. That's Korhorn with K, wisemoneyshow.com. You can find us there as well, or send us an email, info@Korhorn.com. All right, there you have it. Go out and take your next wise step in your financial life.